In Crusade, why doesn't hell just flood Earth with demons and win the war? If time runs at a different beat in hell, why haven't they done that after warring with the church for I think it's about 300 years and now they're at a stalemate? Now, the gate is the obvious answer, but is there more to it than that? The gate logistics behind it, that's what we're going to look at today. So, welcome back to the trenches and let's begin. There are two ways to get to Earth we know about from the law. When you are fighting for the heretics, the gates to hell, opened by the ultimate heresy, standing where Jerusalem once did, and the hell gate in the north. In brief, if you're not familiar with the hell gate in the north, the relevant law for that is that in the north, a gaping hellmouth can appear, possibly at a cross-section of ley lines, or where the demon Azazel fell. It has no fixed spot in the north, it appears and disappears, and is smaller than the Jerusalem hellmouth. So the size will impact how many forces can come through when it opens up. So the following factors will be heightened by the hell gates, or hellmouths, whatever you want to call it, in the north. So, who could guard the gates? Because I think there has to be someone in place to set all those wayward factions and soldiers into some sort of order. Within real-world myths, we have creatures like Cerberus, the three-headed dog, who guards the entrance to the underworld, or a griffin, which has the body of a lion, the head and wings of an eagle, and a lion's tail. But, more appropriately, if you looked at Egyptian myth, minor deities guarded the gates to the underworld, and for them, those deities would allow access to souls to pass through when they knew the secret name of God, which is basically a password. A boat would be used to pass through 12 gates. Another more real-world note to remember, this is a gate that just by its opening seems to allow some of the inferno through. So let's look at the court itself. There are 7 seats. We know 3. Mammon, Beelzebub, though he has walked away to do his own thing with the Black Grail, and Wrath is Abaddon. There are the other seats, and as the powers of those on the side of the heresy waxes and wanes, with some rising and some falling, all that would have an effect on which forces want to come through the gate. I'll have to make an assumption that those rising in power are those that use the gate to field the warriors, to get the people on Earth to feel their particular sin, to vibe with them, so that will give them additional power. So, right now, that will be Mammon and Beelzebub. If you look at the map, they are the only named members of the court that have any territory on Earth, unless I've missed something. And if I have, let me know in the comments. They must have priority. I could imagine Mammon trying to bribe those attending the gate for his soldiers to come through first, whilst Beelzebub relies on the strength of his armies to do the same thing. Whoever gets dominance, then we are down to the next stage, once that dominant faction's through. And I think again, there has to be some authority deciding these things, making someone work, maybe someone working directly for the Morning Star, so they have a position above the general court and its politics. But that's merely my speculation. So, how would the procession look? The law says, before most warbands, the whips of the yoke fiends drive living human slave soldiers of the court, known as the Wretched. These unfortunate souls possess not a drop of demon blood. They act as disposable shock troops, or are used as subjects of torture to power the goetic magic of the conflict between the forces of the court. So they will be first, perhaps with the pit locusts, who it's said move ahead of the warbands, making noise with the clatter of their wings, heralding the coming of the court. Their poison stings, leaving burns that cannot be healed. So within the hierarchy, this army or warband would gather and go through the gate. There would be that organising the ranks, and let's say it's Mammon, and it's his forces that go through. It would then be up to the next batch going through that same process, and they will be vying for which goes first and jostling and getting their ranks in order, maybe waiting to see if that member of the left-handed path actually decides to show up. So there I have tried to give you a feel for how competing forces might try to get through the gate. We don't really know the size of the gate, but no matter the size, it's still going to have some sort of limit, I believe. It's not like a running tap where the armies just unravel like a worm from a rotten gut. We know the armies need things, at least, ammo supplies, as we have a few references to those sorts of industries going on within the bowels of the Inferno. What other factors could stop those soldiers coming out? Something as simple as the width of the gate could limit troops mustering and how they are arranged, assuming many within the ranks of hell are disciplined enough to stand in line. I imagine it's much more chaotic. The wretched maybe run and try and escape and so on. Perhaps some being careless for the covenant of hell and they might try to get through to Earth, swaggering along some lower level demon that doesn't understand what that would do, or perhaps they just don't care about the Covenant. Because if you want to be on Earth and you're from hell, you have to have some sort of earthly part to you. If we also look at more mundane factors, do demons need to eat? I'm not sure. We know the followers of the left-handed path hunt animals, but within the law that seems to be for the hides of the creatures they hunt, rather than their food. So let's say they do, and combine that with the idea of a larger force, who need the ammo to be carried along with the food. First you need something to pull and carry all that, and it needs to be organised in a way that can easily be distributed amongst the soldiers once you're deployed. Throwing all that on a cart, or many carts, would slow the army down, preventing others trying to get out. It would create a bottleneck. If you look at an army, let's say of Macedonia in our world, they use carts only for the essentials of war, such as siege engines or tents, etc. The men would carry themselves. Anything else, the essentials, so that they would not be slowed down. You would need standards of limited size to make sure these can move through the gates of hell. And by standard size, I mean what would be carrying all that stuff that would have to be of a standard size. So it can get through the gates of hell. And of course, having all that with you slows down the army when it emerges, making you imagine away from the effects of the inferno to be slower to react and more vulnerable to attack without that fast moving and reacting, more importantly, ability. And the baggage range would supply a vulnerable point for the army that would have to be protected itself if they're moving any distance away from the gate. I can imagine the followers of Mammon, say the Knights of Avarice, moving large amounts of their goods around, not wanting to give anything valuable up, and surely some of that will go back to Mammon. We have mentioned of one demon owing funds to the Bank of Mammon, so there might be some sort of currency used, even if it's an evolving one. And also, just to jump in at this point with a little off the top of my head ad lib, if Mammon wants something, I imagine he has to go back through the gates of hell to him. So that would be another obstacle, coordinating all that on either side. What a nightmare for the administrators of hell. Now on with what I was saying before. Perhaps the currency is one that each member of the court can appreciate in their own way, and I'm talking about something related to their particular sin. Could those who run the gate be bribed so one warband or army can move ahead of another? Again, that's got to be a Mammon move, I reckon. So that would allow the Marquis of Hell to move ahead of the Duke to see their forces to Earth. So drop me a comment down below to let me know what you think on these ideas. Anything I've missed, anything you'd like to suggest. What would you disagree with? Let's talk in the comments. And if you like this video on the Trinity Crusade, then why not try this one? And if you want a lore deep dive into the Trinity Crusade lore, check out the playlist on my channel. I also cover 40k, with at least one coming out a week, though at the time of recording that's going to be going up very soon. And I have two playlists for that one too, one with everything and one focusing on the dark age of technology, a favourite subject of mine.